What's going on, guys and girls? Today I'm going to be taking you through part 1 of 3 of my full complete breakdown on how to actually win in game mode breakthrough. I will be answering the questions of what are the best ways to defend strategically speaking? What should I be doing as a sniper, assault, support or engineer? How can I give my team the best possible chance to win? Recently I've seen so many posts on Reddit stating they are having a hard time on this game mode. The community are stating that breakthrough games are very one-sided, which I tend to agree with for the most part, but it shouldn't be this way if players apply the principles of which I'm about to teach. I dread to think how many hours of breakthrough I have played in my lifetime, and I see so many players struggling with the basics of strategy, situational awareness, flanking, movement, and playing simple roles to help their team win. Hopefully this guide will help up the standard of play, which will make for some more enticing matches. For context, this guide will be covered from an infantry perspective, and the video format I will be going over is as follows. Team strategy in the early, mid and late stages of the game, followed by more specific details around what each class or role should be doing to give their team the best chance to win in a game of breakthrough. I will be using the map renewal to illustrate my points, but these principles and techniques can be applied on every map. This video is part 1 of 3 and will be from the defender's perspective. Part 2 will cover the attacker's perspective, and part 3 will be me playing in a live game with commentary. If you find this video useful, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss parts 2 and 3. Early game. Unlike other popular game modes such as Conquest, the early game in Breakthrough is arguably the most important part, as pushing the enemy back once the front line has been established can be a tough task. The early game sets the tone as to which team is the more dominant. Being an experienced Breakthrough player, I can tell within the first minute of the game if it's going to be a cakewalk or a very tough 20 minutes. Breakthrough, more than any other game mode, is a game of angles. We need to maintain a wide enough presence on the map where enemies can't close the angle and pinch us out of the objectives. In order to do this and get off to a good start, we need to do the following. 1. Establish a solid front line. Our early game strategy is to establish a solid front line as far to the enemy's spawn as possible. This can be accomplished by being ready to go even before you've started searching for a game. This means you have all your weapons and attachments equipped before the game starts, spawning as early as possible as soon as the timer hits 0. This will allow us to gain as much ground as possible within the first 30 seconds of the game, as both teams are on a foot race to gain as much ground as possible in the early stages. The closer the defending team can get to the enemy spawn, the better. 2. Harass vehicles. Vehicles, more often than not, swing the tide of the battle from the early stages. Engineers need to harass vehicles straight away, setting the tone, and not let tanks, mavs and other vehicles run right into the objective. This is crucial as there can be multiple enemies in one vehicle who can jump out at any moment and secure the objective. 3. Establish presence at power positions. Power positions are usually found on high ground, to the edge of the map or in the middle of the map. By establishing presence at these positions, you are able to deny the enemy of flanks, which stops the enemy from closing the gap, pinching us out of objectives, and closing in on us using a pocket to run right up to the objective. As a general rule of thumb, using smokes is a no-no for the defending side. Due to the fact the attackers need to come to you, defenders should use this to their advantage by not using smokes and being able to see what's coming at them. Attackers have no choice but to come out from undercover and advance on the objective. As the great once said,
I'm gonna float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. George can't hit what his hands can't see.
That's right. Your bullets can't hit what your eyes can't see. There are specific examples of when defenders can use smoke, such as retreating from the front line by a couple of meters to buy yourself some time if outnumbered and re-establish the front line, but I will be going into more specifics in the class section of this video. Mid-game. Once the early game is over and a solid front line has been established, we need to be thinking about how the attackers can break down our defense. We can do this by 1. Maintain power positions and fight to keep control. The attackers are going to be looking to fight for power positions. It's important to keep an eye on these positions in addition to the objective. If we lose power positions, we need to immediately fight to take them back. Otherwise the attackers close in on us by using the wide angle to their advantage and create a pocket in the middle to run straight towards the objective. From here, during the mid-game, it can go one of two ways. The first scenario is that the defenders hold the line by denying attackers of power positions, flanks, and pushing back vehicles, closing out the game this way. Or the second scenario is the enemy takes the flanks, power positions, and pushes defenders off the first objective. If this second scenario comes true, that leads us on to point number 2. Read the game and be situationally aware. This means determine whether to hold the second objective or rotate and go on the offensive to recapture the first objective. The first priority is to make sure the second objective is fully secure. From here, we again re-establish the front line. Be aware that the enemy can now come in 2 different directions, their spawn and the objective they have just captured. Now from here is where a real-time judgment call needs to be made. Do we want to hold the second objective for the remainder of the game, or do we want to rotate to recapture the first objective? This would depend on how many tickets the other team have remaining. The less tickets the attackers have remaining, the more likely they are to rush on the last objective. If the attackers have a lot of tickets left, then we may decide we want to advance to number 3, rotate back to the first objective. Again, have the situational awareness that the enemy can spawn from 2 different directions, so it may be worth taking the route furthest away from their spawn. A good player can see all this develop before it actually happens. That's why checking the minimap and situational awareness is key. As a general rule of thumb, the fewer tickets the attackers have remaining, the more likely they are to push hard onto the final objective, which leads us into the end game. If you have implemented all tactics and techniques mentioned up to this point, we should have a solid front line established. This will enable us to anticipate a heavy push from attackers. At this stage, it's important to maintain power positions so you anticipate the push from attackers and kill them before they reach the objective. Being aware of the situation and being in place ready for the final push can be the difference between a win or a loss. To summarise the general strategy from a defender's perspective, within the early game, we need to 1. Establish a solid front line, 2. Harass vehicles, 3. Establish presence at power positions, and 4. In general, smokes are bad. Within the mid game, we need to 1. Maintain power positions and fight to keep control, number 2. Read the game and be situationally aware for any changes, and number 3. If overrun, ensure that the remaining objective is secure before rotating over to captured objectives. And then the late game. Number 1, close the game out and be aware of remaining tickets, and number 2, anticipate a heavy push from attackers. Moving on to more specifics around how to play each class. Recon Sniper. First point is that if you are going to be playing as a sniper on Breakthrough, don't be that guy who sits in the far corner of the map trying to kill from 500 plus meters away. Snipers are the hardest role to play in a game of Breakthrough, as the skill gap and learning curve is the highest out of all classes. As you can see from this chart, developing the skill of being an accurate, efficient sniper can take some time. If you are new to the game and you want to have a positive impact on your team, then I would suggest playing another role first. With that being said, from the early game, snipers want to not only pick off enemies running straight to the objective, but if possible, they should target enemy engineers trying to target friendly vehicles. One reason for this is because an engineer will more than likely need to be stationary to target moving vehicles, making for an easier target. The second is so that you can support friendly vehicles in moving closer to the front line. Snipers need to stay within a 75 meter radius of the frontline assault class soldiers. This will enable enough support and covering fire for the assault class to do their job and hold the line. As the front line moves back and forth, snipers should also move back and forth relative to the front line positioning. Snipers should also be placing spawn beacons on power positions, which will help stabilise the front line and have squad mates spawn straight into position. The summary of the sniper class: 1. Be efficient and shoot a high volume of rounds. 2. Prioritise shooting engineers and players close to the objectives. Number 3. Stay within 75 metres of the front line assault players. Number 4. Place spawn beacons in power positions. Support. When starting the game, the support class should be racing to the front line a couple of meters behind the assault class and staying within the same vicinity throughout. Naturally, in a game of breakthrough, there is going to be many casualties within the same vicinity. The support class should be picking up as many wounded soldiers as possible. Far too often I see many wounded soldiers on the ground only for the support class to ignore them. The support class can have a huge effect on the outcome of the game. By picking up wounded soldiers, you are avoiding teammates spawning right at the back of the map only to have to run 200 meters to get back in the fight. Summary of the support class. Number 1. Race to the front line behind the assault class. Number 2. Always be on the lookout to revive teammates. Number 3. Be an extension of the assault class and resupply teammates. Engineer. From the moment the game starts, the engineers need to be looking out for enemy vehicles heading towards the objectives. By targeting and hitting the attacking vehicles from the start of the game, this sets the tone to let the attackers know that they are vulnerable and will be hit if they get any closer. Vehicles can more often than not turn the tide of the game, so engineers need to keep up the pressure on attacking vehicles throughout the mid-game. If there aren't enough players on your team playing this role, you might need to switch class temporarily to deal with enemy tanks or aircraft. This is the class which is least played, but perhaps has the greatest effect on the game. To summarise, number 1, target attacking vehicles from the early game. 2, keep pressure on air and ground vehicles throughout the mid-game. 3, switch to the support role if not enough players are currently playing this role. And finally, assault. The assault class should be doing the heavy lifting on the front line. They should be racing to the end zone and setting the tone from the very beginning. Assault class are responsible for gaining control of the power positions. Their main focus is to get as many kills as they can to keep the attackers as close to their spawn as possible. To summarise the assault class, number 1, set the tone from the beginning. Number 2, control power positions. Number 3, hunt for kills. So, there we have it. In this first part of how to actually win in game mode breakthrough, we have covered overall strategy for defenders along with individual roles of each class. If you need anything clarifying, please leave a comment below and we can have a discussion. If you enjoyed or found this video helpful, please do me a solid favour, like, comment and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.